Georgia's income tax is up for debate, and tonight Georgia lawmakers are a step closer to deciding whether they want to do away with it.
And a special study, Carly, committee held its final meeting before the legislative session begins in January, and members say a draft proposal is nearly ready. Atlanta News First reporter Abby Casoris breaks down what's at stake.
Outside a committee room, a packed agenda taped to the door. Inside, an audience made mostly of lobbyists, watching closely as lawmakers weigh one of the biggest tax overhauls in Georgia history. They're considering whether the state should join the small group of states with no income tax at all.
If other states are doing that, it's absolutely asinine for Georgia not to try to do it too.
Right now, income taxes bring in about $20 billion, more than half of Georgia's general fund. For months, the committee has been trying to figure out what would replace the revenue. Committee Chair Blake Tillery suggests getting a hard look at tax credits and exemptions, which the Department of Revenue reports total $30 billion combined. National economist Dr. Art Loeffler, known for promoting income tax repeal, urged lawmakers to follow states like Tennessee.
But the income tax is the single biggest major tax killer of growth.
But Emory accounting professor Usha Raycliffe says lawmakers can't look at the idea in isolation.
It's almost like a three-legged stool. You can't just talk about one side of it without talking about the other two sides of it.
The numbers behind the debate are massive. Georgia already has the 7th lowest tax burden in the country, and replacing the income tax wouldn't be simple. The Georgia Budget and Policy Institute reports that Georgia would need a 12% state sales tax, triple the current rate. With local taxes included, the average sales tax rate statewide would rise to 15.4%. Analysts say that would raise taxes for most Georgians, especially low and middle income families, while the highest earners would see the biggest savings.
It's an immediately attractive proposition, but I think what we want is for people to ask the question, why, and where's the money going, and what will I have to give up?
Lawmakers say that they are actively writing a bill that they hope will pass this session. The committee says that they'll have a report for all lawmakers when they reconvene in January. In Atlanta, I'm Abby Casoris.